Everybody here?
Roger's in. All right, it's still 1 minute. So we'll wait till the clock strikes 4. Oh, the witching hour, but not quite. It's 4 o'clock. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I will call this committee of the whole meeting to order for May the 12th, 2022, and acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional territory of Tla'amin Nation. Directors, you have your agenda in front of you. Could I please have a motion to approve director?
I actually want to add a notice of motion under new business.
Okay, sure. I'll just make a note of that. All right.
I'll move adoption of the agenda.
Yeah, that's correct. We'll call on you under new business. Are there any other changes to the agenda?
Delegations.
We have an unregistered delegation, 2 registered delegations. So
I'll second the motion as amended.
okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes of April the 14th. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing no hands, a motion to approve the minutes, please. Director Dowd, seconded by Director Fall. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. All right, we have 2 delegations who are registered and 1 unregistered delegation. So I will call on the first one, Cathy Peters from the BC Anti-Trafficking Educator position. We've heard from you before, Ms. Peters, welcome. And I would ask all delegations please to pay attention to the time clock that will be displayed on the screen. Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much for the second opportunity to present. The last time I described the growing problem of child sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, and human sex trafficking in BC. Since that presentation, I've made similar presentations to Indigenous groups, BC members of Parliament, MLAs, provincial bureaucrats, city councils, regional districts, law enforcement, police boards, school boards, service clubs, universities, high schools, 2 global summits, recently to the Federal Justice Committee, and 2 weeks ago, I was asked to do a 1-hour webinar on human trafficking to all of law enforcement in Canada, hosted by the RCMP, and that was a huge honor. I emailed all BC City Councils my presentation script to the Federal Justice Committee that is now reviewing the federal law called the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act. The law has 4 parts. Number 1, it targets the demand by criminalizing the buyers of sex and profiteers. Number 2, recognizes a seller of sex as a victim, usually female, and execution. Number 3, there's supposed to be exit strategies in place to assist the victim out of the sex trade. And number 4, there's supposed to be robust prevention education and rollout campaigns so youth, children, and the vulnerable are not lured into the sex industry. The sex industry is anxious to repeal this law in order to normalize, legitimize, and commercialize the sex industry in Canada. In other words, to legalize prostitution. It is important for every community to understand the implications of a possible repeal. The clear statement from Parliament was that women and girls in Canada are not for sale, that they are full human beings with dignity and human rights. It also recognized that women, girls, the marginalized, vulnerable, are disproportionately represented in prostitution. Legalizing the sex industry, if we consider Germany, the Netherlands, Nevada, and New Zealand, increase the size and scope of the trade, leading to more human trafficking, child sex trafficking, more involvement of organized crime, more prostitution, and more violence. To understand the sex industry, I refer to the Robert Picton case, the pig farmer who dismembered prostituted women, and in particular Indigenous women, on his Port Coquitlam farm. I do not want anyone in BC to be under the illusion as to the brutality of this industry. If violence is central to the life of prostitution, the only clear way to reduce violence is to reduce the size of the trade. New Zealand is cited as the gold standard by the sex industry. However, it is a tiny populated, isolated island in the Pacific Ocean. Canada shares the longest border in the world with the USA. Canada would become America's brothel. The majority in prostitution have pimps, 84 to 90%, the vast majority. Organized crime and international crime syndicates are involved. Currently, a growing problem is in schools where there is peer-on-peer recruiting. School administrators, counselors, PACs, parents, and students need education to stop exploitation. School liaison police officers are really important. So what I wanted to do this time with you is go over the really important new resources that we have. So number one, and I mentioned this last time, was the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking. And you can contact them to get these free posters and postcards and wallet cards. What I like about them is on the back, they've got the indicators to know what to look for. And then of course, the human trafficking hotline number, which is such a fantastic resource. Anybody can get help in any corner of Canada 24/7. The people that answer this number have master's degrees in social work, and you have access to over 200 languages. So very, very helpful. Also, there's the Canadian Centre for Child Protection out of Manitoba. They run cybertip.ca. The number of child exploitation images online have significantly increased. So sexting, sextortion, cyberbullying, cyber sex terrorism is becoming a big problem. Number two, former member of Parliament who introduced Canada's 3 laws on human trafficking has launched the National Human Trafficking Education Centre. And I mean, fantastic resources there. Number three, down here at the bottom, in BC, we have OCTIP, that's the Office to Combat Trafficking in Persons. They have a free training online program, which is excellent. And I think everybody on the Sunshine Coast, staff, et cetera, are taking that course. And Children of the Street offer excellent school programs. And I'm in touch with them. Your local police detachment, I say to everybody, report, report, report. They will tell the provincial government there's no problem with this crime because they don't get the report. So reporting is really important. And last of all is my website, the beamazingcampaign.org. There's 2 teaching videos on here, one for parents and one for youth. These were videotaped by the Richmond RCMP. So my goal is what we need is enforcement of the law and a provincial awareness education campaign, particularly in BC, which is decades behind all provinces in Canada in addressing this crime. Now, what I've done is I have forwarded some handouts that I have forwarded to all the city councils on what you can do to stop this crime. I have strategies for police, strategies for cities and municipalities. I have human trafficking indicators, but I also have, because this connects with my question, I have a template letter. So I ask is for a support letter. Would you please write the Minister of Justice, he knows me, David Lametti, that the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act needs to be strengthened and consistently enforced in Canada, along with a robust rollout educational campaign. And just in brackets, ideally, I would like a resolution for UBCM. I think Dawson Creek has done a resolution on child sex trafficking. Thank you so much. And it's just always a pleasure to present to you.
Thank you very much, Cathy. And thank you for sharing the information with us. Directors, are there questions of the delegation or comments, questions? No, I'm seeing no hands. So I want to thank you very much and good luck with your work.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Oh, Director Doak, did you have?
No, I'm waving.
Oh, you're waving. Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, our second delegation is Rob Ringma, from BC Transit, and he's going to talk about the annual operating agreement. So, Rob, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Chair McCormick. Thank you, directors. Appreciate the opportunity to be here again today. I am going to share my screen for a presentation. And we'll put the presentation mode. There, can everybody see that screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, great to be here again today. Hopefully everyone around the table remembers me. I'm Rob Ringma. I'm the Senior Manager of Government Relations for BC Transit. I manage the Sunshine Coast, the Sea to Sky, and the Central Fraser Valley regions. Today, yes, we will talk a little bit of the annual operating agreement, but I did decide to take the opportunity to just give a quick update in a couple of other areas. So I just want to talk a little bit about a ridership update, some upcoming initiatives, touch base a little bit on digital on demand, as I know you guys are working on a grant to look into that a little bit. I will discuss the annual operating.
Can you hang on one sec? We're getting extreme fluctuations in the sound level.
Thank you, Chair. It's likely from Mr. Ringma's side.
Let me try that. I'll just unplug my headphones. It might modulate a little bit better. Is that better?
Sounds good so far. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, no, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yes, sorry, and talk a little bit about just some future service planning as well. So on this slide, what you can see is the top line is ridership from 2019, and this is provincial ridership across all the weeks of the year. So you see ridership in 2019 pre-pandemic was cruising along quite well. Of course, in 2020, we had the large drop in March of 2020. 2021, we saw a pretty good recovery from those pandemic lows. And then you'll see here in green, you'll see 2022. So, ridership is coming back. It's coming back slowly but steadily. We still currently are, though, across the province, around 70%. We're still only at about 70% of those pre-COVID levels. So we still have some work to do, work to go. And I would just say, I was doing a little bit of looking. I don't have a slide for the Powell River and rural systems in this presentation, but it is pretty much following the same similar patterns as the rest of the province at around that 70% recovery. So clearly BC Transit, we've made it a bit of our mission this year to really work to do everything we can to regain that ridership for basically our systems. And clearly that's important because it delivers some of the revenue that helps offset your cost of transit. One of the pieces that we are launching in the Powell River region will be our Next Ride and our Smart Bus technology. So basically with this technology, what we're doing is we're putting automatic vehicle locators on all of our buses, and that'll allow for real-time planning. Basically, by having those automatic vehicle locators on the buses, these GPS units, we'll be able to track those buses in real time. And what we'll be able to do with that data is then communicate that to our customers through Google Maps, or an application like the Transit app, an app that they can use. And they'll basically, and I've got another slide here to talk a little bit about it, show you what the capabilities are. But basically, you can be standing on the street and say, okay, where's my nearest bus stop and what buses are coming to that stop? And the system will tell you that. And it'll also tell you exactly where those buses are, whether they're on time or running behind. It'll give you all that information. Some of the other improvements will also be, we'll have annunciators on all the buses. So next stop announcements will be enunciated both audibly, and we'll have an electronic display on the buses. So you can also see that visually for customers. And then clearly in the back end, all of this data will give us better opportunity for planning. Basically, better data is going to allow us to make better decision-making in terms of routing and scheduling. So that is, all of that technology is actually being installed on the buses currently, and we're hoping for a late spring, early launch of that technology. This slide here just shows you a little bit about what the kind of user interface would look like. So this is off the transit app. You'll see on the screen on the right-hand side, I actually just picked a spot on Joyce Avenue. You can see it's 4441 Joyce Avenue. And basically, if I'm standing there at 441 Joyce Avenue and I go, okay, what bus stops are coming near me? It basically tells me all the different buses that are coming and what time they'll be coming by. And then if I selected the route 2, it'll actually show me the route. So I can actually see while I'm standing at the bus stop, what route do I actually need to get onto to see where I need to go. So I think this is going to be a welcome improvement to our system. We're going to move from kind of the analog rider's guide age, although we will have rider's guides, but it'll definitely move us a little bit more into the digital age to provide an additional service to our customers. The other thing we are going to roll out an electronic fare strategy, and that's going to roll out later in 2022, actually kind of the fall to winter of 2022 and into 2023. But basically, this is going to be upgrading our payment system. So some of you may be familiar with TransLink. TransLink, you have a Compass card that you need to tap in. You need to purchase a Compass card. You load it. You can tap in, tap out. We're kind of leapfrogging that technology, and we're actually going to move to open payment technology. So debit card, credit card, mobile applications. You'll be able to use all of those different mediums to purchase your fare product with BC Transit. And we'll basically verify that through an onboard validator. So, the benefits of this, again, will be seamless integration in transit. So we'll be able to actually maybe reduce the use of transfers. People will be able to basically reload their card and have a better, more access to being able to access the service. And I should say that cash will still be an option. We'll still have cash boxes, but this just really will upgrade that technology. And again, provide us with a lot more robust data that we can use from an operational perspective and from a planning perspective. So digital on demand. From a digital on demand perspective, again, everybody around this table is probably very aware that digital on demand allows transit customers to request transit service in a specific area using a smartphone application. Digital on demand obviously gives operators the ability to alter routes based on where the demand is rather than following a fixed route and schedule like a conventional transit route. So BC Transit's been looking at this for quite a while. We've been doing quite a bit of work over the last year on this. And we had consultants from Left Turn, Right Turn and Watt Consulting recently finish our feasibility study on digital on demand as a solution option within BC Transit systems. So the study areas were in Kelowna and Cranbrook because those communities represented a good range of communities that BC Transit serves. And the overall goal of that feasibility study was to really determine where digital on demand is best suited and where it is not. That would then obviously allow us to look at other systems across BC Transit and across the province and get a good gauge on where digital on demand might work, where it might not. So I have provided staff with our digital on demand feasibility summary report, as well as the 2 individual feasibility studies. And by all means, please reach out to staff. They should be able to provide those to you, or I can provide those to you if you're more interested. But really some of the key findings is that digital on demand is best utilized for low ridership routes. Obviously, still considering cost considerations, distance, time, those things need to be understood. There's opportunities to integrate digital on demand with conventional service. So basically go from maybe a smaller, lower ridership area into a key corridor or a frequent transit network. There's definitely an opportunity to move to a stop-to-stop model versus door-to-door and still provide a high level of service, but maybe not quite the same costs that you incur when you actually provide exact door-to-door service. And the other thing we found out was that there was very few agencies that were actually using it for a custom or handy dart service. And that really comes down to just the fact that a lot of those clients needed still a backup phone number to call in to dispatch. There's registration processes that add complexity, and obviously there's unique and specialized needs for a lot of the people that utilize the handy dart system. So from a next steps perspective from BC Transit, and we are looking to launch in 1 or 2 communities, pilot communities, to test the service type. As you can imagine, we need to procure the vehicles that we need, the technology platform that we need, and do all the background pieces to get this up and running. So we want to run those in those 2 test pilot communities for at least a year, to get a better understanding of performance and the capabilities and of our systems. Then stage 2 would be to identify the other communities that align with some of those similar characteristics that I was mentioning, where we see digital on demand would be feasible and possibly be an opportunity. So we'll roll out to more of those communities. And then stage 3, based on the success of the mid-range, we will continue to evaluate and roll out to other communities. So yeah, pretty excited to see this program starting to roll out. And again, I have been working with our internal team in kind of the launching of the 1 to 2 pilot communities, and definitely mentioned that Powell River looks, in my eyes, in the region as a viable candidate for you. So wanted to talk a little bit about our annual operating agreement. So this is our annual operating agreement between BC Transit and the local municipality that outlines all of the costs and revenues that we're projecting to incur in the calendar year, or sorry, I should say fiscal year. Some of the highlights from what we see this year versus last year, revenue and ridership have been adjusted up from last year, but they're still lower than pre-COVID ridership. So you see the revenue of $10,000 projected for this year is up $2,800 from the year before. But just to put that in perspective, in 2019, pre-COVID, the regional district was seeing revenues of about $14,000. So we're still being conservative in our estimates there. These costs do represent a full year of service with our new operating partner with the City of Powell River. Obviously, that contract was finalized last year. This budget presents a whole year of that contract. Some other operating cost factors that you see operating costs are up around $56,000. Some of the pieces that service hours related to the expansion to Lund. So that's the extra day of service to Lund. We also are clearly seeing some increases in the cost of fuel. We had budgeted at $1.36 a liter in comparison to $1.23 last year. So obviously the cost of fuel that a lot of us are experiencing is also impacting the transit industry. Our insurance premiums also have seen quite large inflationary increases. They're up about 15%. And we're also maintaining our advanced cleaning costs that we've implemented in COVID. So we've moved those into operating costs, and we still have those costs to incur. And then additional technology improvements. So the next ride, the electronic fare collection system that I had just mentioned previously, there's technology and equipment that's involved in that. We share that cost with our local government partners, but we would see that as about a $3,000 add-on this year in this budget. And then the other piece I just want to highlight is we did have an operating reserve that we were able to apply last year of around $25,000. We exhausted that operating reserve this year. So there's no dollars in that reserve that we can apply this year. The good news is we did get another Safe Restart grant from the provincial and federal governments. So last year we received around $10,000 or $11,000. This year we received $12,500. So we'll be able to apply that against your total net municipal share of costs if we're directed to, which would bring your total net municipal share of costs to around $138,000 to operate the transit system this year in the district. And then BC Transit, through our cost share agreement, we would pick up the other $176,895. So just a couple of slides left. Just want to talk a little bit about service expansions. So the province did approve funding for our Route 14 expansion to Lund. That was last year. So we were able to implement that in January of 2022. And I know that was well received. For this year, we did have, and the regional district did approve an expansion for the extra day of service to Tiskwat Island. That would have included an additional bus. and we had targeted that expansion for July of this year. Unfortunately, the province, well, I should say fortunately, the province approved all of our base level budgets for this fiscal, but they didn't approve any additional expansion requests across the province. So this is not isolated to just your system. This is something across the province. And really, that I would say that's probably a net effect of some of the infrastructure and inflationary costs that the province has occurred across the province. You can just look to the fall flooding and damage in the Fraser Valley and up through the Coquihalla region over the fall, some major infrastructure issues there. And also, we still have excess capacity within our transit systems as we're still only operating at about 70% of pre-COVID ridership levels. Prior year strategies have typically involved funding for expansion hours, but it's really looked and expected that we should be able to grow ridership within the capacity in most of our systems. So unfortunately, yes, we unfortunately can't move forward with that Tex Ada expansion this year. But what I will do is work with staff through our kind of transit improvement process this year, and we will reapply for that initiative. Some other initiatives that we can put forth to this committee and the board, and make sure that we have some robust options for expansions in the next year. And the only other comment I just want to make there is that additional bus. I feel it's really important for the region because it's going to give us that greater flexibility for future improvements. We've pretty much maxed out the capacity and utilization of our current bus fleet, and we really need that expansion to get another bus into the system so we can provide not only the Tex Ada Island service, but potentially some other service improvements down the road. Lastly, I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that we still are moving forward with our transit future service plan. I don't have one of our planners with us today who would go through this in great detail. But again, this is the process where we look at what we did in 2015. We analyze kind of some infrastructure needs, COVID impacts. We do wholesome stakeholder and public engagement to really find out what some of the needs are in the region from a transit perspective. And then we build those into a transit future service plan, which we use as kind of a long-term plan to feed information into our transit improvement process. So that is still on track for fall of this year, completing that process through the fall of 2023 when we'll have a finalized report. In the meantime, we are working on a service discussion document, so some short-term planning that we're working on with the city of Powell River, but we'll also be looking at the rural paratransit routes as well, just looking at some short-term implementation options that we can feed into this transit future service plan. But we just want to make sure we have some options, as I mentioned, to go into our expansion process this year to bring to this board that we can then take to the province for potential adoption. So that's the end of my presentation. It looks like I did go a little over, and I apologize for that, but I'd be happy to take questions at this time.
Great, thank you very much, Rob. And yes, I did go over, but certainly you couldn't leave any of that out. It was very interesting information. So directors, I'll throw it open now to questions or comments from anyone around the table. Well, I'm not seeing, Director Leishman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ringma. It's nice to see you, and that is all such good news. The improvements to the existing service, like that's just going to make it so much easier for riders to utilize the bus service. Just being able to see, get the transit app and see where the bus is and see what the quickest one to take is, and yeah, all those improvements are very, very much needed and appreciated, and really looking forward to the next steps, the future planning, and to potentially some more on demand. That would be amazing. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Director Leishman. Director Doug.
Now, if you could go back to page 9 of the presentation you were showing us there was a note at the bottom that caught my attention.
Okay, let me go back to sharing my screen. Back to page 9. I have that as page 9, Director Doubt.
Just at the bottom, there's a little gem there that says if safe restart funding applied, this fiscal share would decrease to 138K. Can you explain that comment?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you picking up on that. So that would be this $12,590 that was allocated to you in Safe Restart funding. We have not applied that yet to the $151,196. Staff would need to direct us to do that. These dollars are for you to utilize and they go against your net municipal share of costs. It's not a shared fund. This goes directly against your net municipal share. So staff, I will be sending out a form to staff probably in the next week where they can, if they so choose, and you might see this from a board level, choose to allocate that towards this fiscal, it would bring that $151,000 down to $138,000. So it would further reduce your share of cost for the transit system this year.
Okay, and it would reduce that difference of 34,276 down to 22 something.
That is correct.
Correct. Okay, thanks for that. It's good for the report. And, if I'd really like to see copies of the study that you spoke about earlier, and I'm sure staff can distribute that to us. But thanks for the report.
Thank you.
We need more transit, not less. So.
We certainly do. And so I'll just add a couple of comments and questions on there. I'm really excited by the on-demand aspect. And as Director Leishman said, the ability to use your phone and see, okay, I need this bus. There's where I get it. There's the time it will arrive. That's terrific. Now, you're talking about a pilot project, and I'm just wondering, you mentioned Powell River might be under consideration for this. Now, is that the city of Powell River, or would that include the Cathy region as well?
Yeah, so clearly with only 2 pilot communities being proposed for this year, there is quite a bit of demand or requests that are coming in for that pilot community. I have put in for it to be reviewed for Powell River and the rural paratransit system. Again, there are some challenges, and again, I know from just liaising with staff, I know you're looking at maybe using some of that rural transit funding to do some more exploratory research into on-demand or digital on-demand for the rural paratransit systems. It'll be interesting to see where that nets out. Some of the longer distances that are involved in rural systems sometimes don't lend themselves well to digital on demand, but that's not to say that there aren't pieces and parts that would work. And I think the real key piece is that, finding the right way to line up digital on demand with conventional transit, because it's been proven that if you have too much ridership, and that's a good thing, a conventional system with a larger bus does work very, very well and is actually more efficient than digital on demand. But there are pockets of, I should say, nuggets of gold where digital on demand can really help the entire kind of transit ecosystem to operate better. So yes, I put that all forward to BC Transit and have my fingers crossed to see what comes out the other end.
Okay, thanks. I'd really like to see how it would apply in the rural areas, because that's where you get often the greatest need, where there's no transit service at all. So that's very exciting. I guess my final question then is about the Texada run. I remember last year when we were debating the budget, and there was a sum in there of maybe 35 for a new bus that we approved. And I'm just wondering what happened with that amount of money, and where the process is regarding reapplying next year, et cetera.
Yeah, great question, and I appreciate it. So yes, you are correct. The actual, and good memory, the estimated net municipal share for that expansion was around $38,000. So what the process is, and we do this every year, and we're about to start it again this year, is we go through our transit improvement process where we work with staff. based on the priorities of the board and the community, to propose different service options to the board and in Powell River to Powell River City Council. Those are usually costed options where we then need to get a signed MOU from the board or from a board or municipal council to commit to their share of the costs. Then we take that MOU and we go to the province. We basically sum all of those MOUs up across the province, and then we go to the province in our service plan request for the matching funds through our cost share formula. So in my presentation, what I alluded to was we did that on behalf of the district. The province did not approve expansions across the province this year. So what we will do, we'll revisit that with staff again. We will bring that back to the board. If this board still wants to pursue a TICSADA expansion, which I'm going to assume at this point is still a high priority, that's why it was on there in the first place, then we will make sure we revise our costing, give you any updates to that costing. Provided it's approved by this board, we will again resubmit that to the province for funding for next year. But we probably will have some other options that we might throw on the table to be discussed and debated before we finalize that MOU.
Great. I'm just a little hopeful that the money that we agreed to spend for another bus, and then the bus didn't happen, isn't going to go to waste, that it's still going to be earmarked for another bus and we're not going to have to pay it again.
Yeah, what I can tell you, just to further that, the annual operating agreement numbers that I did show you do not include any of those expansion dollars. So you'd have to refer to staff to how your budget was built. Typically, we give you base level budgets, and then when we get approval and we know that there's funding from the province for those expansion items, then we add those into your budget. So the $38,000 was not included in the annual operating agreement numbers that I showed you on a previous slide.
Okay, thank you. Final opportunity for any directors who have a question or comment. Seeing no hands, Rob, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jones.
Chair, before we move on, I do believe that we'll need authorization to execute the annual operating agreement. So I have prepared a motion for the committee to consider.
Thank you.
I'm going to share it.
That's going to be on our screen momentarily. Okay, that the committee recommend the board approve and adopt the 22-23 BC Transit Annual Operating Agreement and Budget, and that the board authorize the execution of documents related to this matter. Is there a mover? Leishman, thank you. Seconded by Director Brabazon. Discussion. Director Dowd.
This agrees to the budget that was presented on the screen in page 9 of the report, as is.
Yes, I believe that is what would be intended. Yes, that would be intended with this motion.
Director Brabazon, is your hand up?
No.
All right. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you. Now we can move on to the unregistered delegation. And I understand we have Lenny Goggins with the Inclusion Powell River on the line, and she is going to be speaking with us. So, Ms. Goggins, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we sure can.
Great. Thanks, everyone. My name is Lenny Goggins. I am the Director of Social Economy and Other Cool Stuff. That is my official title, and I work for Inclusion Powell River Society. And tonight I would like to just share with you a plan that we're putting together for a rebuild store that we want to launch in the Powell River Cathy region. And we're hoping to receive a letter of support from the Cathy Regional District to move forward with this plan. And so I can just gonna share with you a PowerPoint so I can walk you through why we want to do this. Okay, great. So, as always, we'd like to greatly acknowledge that we are working on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin Nation, traditional and treaty territory. So Inclusion Powell River completed our 5-year strategic plan, and one of the items from that plan relates directly to this work and some of the work that I'm guiding, and that's to continue to seek funding to take steps to maintain and expand our One Light social enterprise so that we can provide inclusive employment. So that is our primary focus with our social economy work. Our corporate structure for our social enterprises, currently we have 2 on the go. So Inclusion Powell River operates PRIZE, Powell River Innovation and Social Enterprise, which is a limited company who they are the sole shareholder of. That operates Kindred Enterprises, which are all the projects that I'm working on, and that includes One Light and Kindred Rebuilt. And I'll describe for you what One Light is, if for those of you who don't know. So One Light is a local fire starter manufacturing company. This is our product. The wood is taken from construction sites that we break down into sticks. We wrap it in a recycled toilet paper cuff that we collect around the community. And then we submerge this fire starter in recycled wax that we collect from around Powell River, the Lower Mainland, and Vancouver Island. And we sell this product all over North America. Our manufacturing facility is located in Townsite Market. This is one of our employees happily making a fire starter. We currently have 13 people with and without disabilities working at One Light manufacturing fire starters. So the Rebuild is a new enterprise that we want to launch, and we're hoping for your support in that. The project objectives of the Kindred Rebuild, which is the name we're giving it, it's a project intended to support Kindred enterprises, including the Employment Project One Light, and to support the Cathy Regional District's Solid Waste Management and Resource Recovery Plan. The Resource Recovery Plan has adopted a pollution prevention hierarchy, which ensures materials or products are reused as many times as possible before entering the solid waste stream. This is something that One Light is also very much committed to with our recycling. So currently, this is taken from the Solid Waste Management Plan. If you haven't read it recently, we have 3 items that directly relate to our rebuild idea. One is that presently there are no facilities in the Cathy Regional District that receive leftover or used construction materials for resale. We want the plan suggested to encourage local reuse, upcycling, recycling endeavors by providing a space at the Resource Recovery Center for self-supporting pilot projects as one option. And then establish a facility for the sale of reusable CD waste, construction demolition waste. It is anticipated that such a facility could be located at the Resource Recovery Center. However, if space or operational costs make this not viable, the PPRD would actively support the establishment of a similar operation by local business or nonprofit organization. And that's where we come in. So what is a rebuild when we say rebuild? A rebuild is a place that diverts reusable building materials and goods from the landfill. It creates opportunities for upcycling and the innovative reuse of waste materials, which support the circular economy. And by circular economy, what I mean is using materials as many times as possible before they end up in the landfill. To work with local organizations, businesses, and governments to build greater community capacity for the circular economy, to foster community engagement, and to raise awareness around the social, economic, and environmental benefits of the 3 R's, which are reduce, reuse, recycle. Each rebuild accepts and sells different materials. So there's a couple close to us that you may be aware of. Whistler Community Services Society has a rebuild store in Whistler, Squamish Rebuild, and the closest is Habitat for Humanity's Restore, which is a global nonprofit organization, and they have a restore in Seashelt. So our location and material, our plan, we're proposing the 7,000 block of Alberni Street, which is a 5,000 square foot commercial space in what I like to call the thrift store district of Powell River, next door to the hospital auxiliary. That's one of the locations that we're considering. This photo represents one of the sheds that's used in Squamish. So this shed stores materials outside securely and was permitted by the city of Squamish to have in their city limits. We intend to stock and use the following avenues. Junk removal service, where we would offer curbside pickup of materials for a fee, similar to a junk removal program that are in other cities. And we would use the One Light truck to do this. And then we would ask for donations of new and used materials from the public, as well as asking local hardware stores who are clearing out lightly used or returned materials that they can't put back on their shelves. So that's how we're going to stock it. Other opportunities for a rebuild would be to launch a free goods program that would support low and no income community members with furniture and household items. That's an important one for Inclusion Pullover. Upcycling workshops, so creating new things from waste materials. Upskilling and training opportunities, which directly relates to what we do at One Light. More diverse, inclusive employment opportunities. Bottle collection and return. Possible e-cycling and electronic refurbishing, building deconstruction, and mattress recycling. So these are all future possibilities if we were to launch a rebuild in the region. So in terms of planning, we did conduct an environmental scan where we called every rebuild that we could think of across BC, Alberta. We even had conversations with an Australian rebuild to see how they operate their system. And what we learned is that everyone that we talk to employs inclusively to varying degrees. So it's a very good employment environment to provide inclusive employment, which we're very keen about. Most do not pay dumping fees for disposal of unused items, unsellable items rather. So they have arrangements with their own municipalities to waive dumping fees. All of them use the sales revenue to support other social projects. So they're not going into investors' pockets. The ones that offer pickup and delivery offer it curbside only, and they always charge a fee. They have additional revenue streams in addition to the rebuild. They all use volunteer support in addition to paid employees to operate their business. And some of the businesses offer tax receipts for donations when they are charitable organizations. So that's what we've learned so far. So in terms of what we want to do, our outputs are to negotiate a lease with a space that has both indoor and outdoor storage so that we can have materials stored outside, to raise startup capital through grants and other fundraising means, to build community partnerships. So City of Powell River, Cathy Regional District, School District 47, and LIFT are just a few organizations that we are starting to speak to. Offer paid curbside delivery and pickup service, would launch pretty quickly, to generate additional revenue and donations using our truck, to engage individual donors and to receive, so that we can receive in-kind donations directly through pickup or through customers, and amass partnerships with building suppliers. So that way we can receive those in-kind donations of, tools that they couldn't put on the shelves and materials like that. Our goals to generate additional revenue that will help to support One Light social enterprise, to create inclusive employment, to create community partnerships, to create awareness about the circular economy, and lastly, to support the Cathy Regional District's goal of continually reducing the amount of waste required for disposal. Here's just a couple community members that we're wanting to approach and work with to launch this rebuild. And here's the timeline. So we do have a community forest grant that we put forward in March. We've met with Inclusion Powell River Board, of course, and now we're seeking letters of support for the rebuild. And we're hoping, this is a very, very tight timeline, but we could be operational as soon as July of 2022 if everything goes swimmingly well and we can pull it off. Yeah, so thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing. Are there any questions for me? It's a lot of information jam-packed in there.
Yep, and we really appreciate it because it's a very exciting project that you're undertaking, and Yeah, I know I've often been a customer at a rebuild store or used building supply, as it's called in Vancouver, and amazing things that you can find there. Totally stuff out of heritage houses. It's just amazing, the stuff removed with care because someone knew that it was going to be repurposed. So I think that's an important aspect of what you're doing. Questions from committee members? Questions, comments? Director Leishman.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much, Ms. Goggins. That definitely, we know that's something that we need. It's very well spelled out in like you mentioned, our solid waste management plan. So for now, you're looking for a letter of support to what specifically is the letter of support? Should it say?
Support of Inclusion Powell River starting a rebuild store. Just that you're aware of us launching this and that you feel it aligns with your plans.
Okay. And okay.
Magic of technology, there is the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That sounds good. Thank you.
Are you moving this motion, Director Leishman?
Yeah, I can move that.
Thank you. Seconded, Director Gisborne. Discussion. Director Brander, Director Dow.
Thanks, Chair. I just have a quick question, I guess probably for Melissa Howie. How, I get a bit more detail how it would work in conjunction with the Resource Recovery Center.
Howie.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes. In 2021, the board did direct staff to facilitate the reuse of salvage building supplies by providing a pilot store or free store at the Resource Recovery Center. At present, the construction timeline for that wouldn't necessarily line up with what Inclusion Powell River's current construction timeline is, but that is an initiative that staff are undertaking as part of the Resource Recovery Center. Thank you.
Just to follow up, so would that be like competition for this one, or would it be some kind of, working together on it, or?
Yeah, through the chair, that would be through an RFP proposal. So an RFP would go out into the world seeking, a nonprofit or society that would be interested in the work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Director Doe.
Yeah, and I support the resolution the way it is. It was a complicated presentation with a lot of interactions between the Resource Recovery Center, potentially the city with garbage pickup and prices of dropping off material at the Resource Recovery Center, a whole bunch of details, zoning and other ones come to mind. But this is really a really simple letter of support in principle that says we support the establishment of a recovery center, basically, and doesn't go into any detail other than that. I could support it on that. I think it's, it's a great thing to try to establish exactly where, exactly how it works, exactly what the rules are. Is going to be a lot of work to figure out, but I think it's a good place to start.
Thank you, Director Doe. Other comments, questions? Seeing no other hands, we have a motion on the floor. Directors, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Lenny.
Thank you all. Thanks for your time.
All right, now, that's a lot of information. So we'll get back to the agenda. There is no unfinished business under item 5. Under item 6, correspondence. First item from Rod Wiebe, the chair of the library board. Director Brander.
I move that we receive it, and also that I move the committee recommend the board submit the following resolution to the UBCM, and then just copy the motion that Mr. Wiebe has in his correspondence.
Okay, seconded by Director Dow. Thank you. Discussion. Director Brander, then Director Paul.
I just want to say this motion is not unique to us. I believe that there are many municipalities and local governments submitting it. So we are not there on our own.
Right, and I believe this was mentioned at ABICC too. It rings a bell. Director Paul.
Thank you. I support this too, and it's an issue that Vancouver Island Regional Library has been dealing with for as well. And some information that I received last year from Vancouver Island Regional Library was that provincial funding was over 22%. In 1986, it was over 22% of the budget for libraries, and by 2020, it was down to about 5%. And that's not from reductions; that's from basically attrition. That's just not increasing it. So I think it's time for the province to really look at that, support libraries, and you know, increase that funding a bit.
Yeah, thank you, Director Fall. And maybe like a cost of living thing could be established, you know, where those increases are established annually. So, but yes, the motion is a great place to start. We have a motion. We've got a motion on the floor. Okay. Yes. All right. Is there further discussion on the motion? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Right. Moving on to item 6.2 from Kirsten Mattison, Infrastructure Canada, a Tiskwat on-demand shuttle for Tla'amin. Sounds exciting. What is your pleasure, directors?
I'll move receipt.
Okay, receipt has been moved, seconded by Director Brander. Discussion. Seeing no hands, all in. Oh, Director Doe.
So, it's an interesting letter. It's a letter from Infrastructure Canada to Cal Radke, not addressed to the Cathy Regional District Board. It's a grant approval in principle. I don't recall the board applying for a grant for this. I'm curious about what the application was, what exactly the project is, because it's referred to as the Tiskwat Tla'amin Nation on-demand bus service. And, I'm curious about where it came from, what it is when we made the application, and what exactly the contract is that's being referred to in the letter.
Good question, Director Doe. Corporate Officer, you have a response.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I believe this is resulting from the working group recommendations to, and there was a budget amendment in the second quarter of 2021 to allocate $5,000. I believe Tla'amin Nation and the City of Powell were also asked to do the same. Subsequently, there was a report in August of 2021 directing staff to apply for this grant. I think it might just be a wording issue because the grant was submitted on behalf of Tla'amin Nation, Cathy Regional District, and the City of Powell River.
Go ahead, Director Doe.
I think this could be a very important contract, a very important list of decisions that are being made. And I hesitate to do that without knowing what it is that we applied for, how we applied for it, what exactly it is, what the contracts are. I'm going to make a motion that we postpone a decision on this motion until we have a report from staff on the details of the grant.
Okay.
Chair, point of order?
Yes.
We have a motion on the floor to receive it, and that's all we have.
That's right.
There's nothing more.
There's no further action required.
Well, as long as nobody in the board thinks this is authorization to sign the contract that's mentioned in there.
The motion is to receive the correspondence, and that's it.
I still think it's a bad process to receive the correspondence when we don't know what it's about, have no information about it. And I would rather have an understanding of what it is we're voting to accept before we decide to do it.
Thank you, Director Doe. Director Leishman.
Well, technically, the fact that we adopted the agenda with correspondence on there, we have received it. So it's just a formality. I don't see any issue with us receiving it.
Okay. Thank you, Director Leishman. Anything further on the motion to receive this item of correspondence? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. One opposed. Thank you. The motion is carried. So we are now on to item 6.4. Item 6.3 from the Social Planning Research Council of BC, SPARC, regarding Access Awareness Day. That is coming up, and I think this is an information item that they want to share with us.
I'll move receipt.
Receipt has been moved. Thank you, Director Brabazon, seconded by Director Brander, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. And now we have the correspondence from Abby McLennan regarding the shoreline cleanup project, and she too is asking for a letter of support. Director Brander.
Thanks, Chair. I'd move receipt and that the committee recommend the board provide a letter of support to the Ocean Legacy Foundation and to Let's Talk Trash in regards to their application for grant funding under the Clean Coast Clean Waters Initiative.
Thank you. And we have that motion now that has been posted. Is there a seconder? Director Leishman, you're seconding? Thank you. Discussion. Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this. I think it's great. It did a lot of work on our shorelines last year. I do have one question through the chair that Ms. McLennan may be able to help with. When I thought about this item, I thought about adding in that we ratify it to send it right now. So is there a timing issue? Our board meeting is on the 26th of May, I believe. And so would that be too late for the letter, or should we structure the motion so that the letter could be sent now and ratified at the board meeting?
Thank you, Director Paul. Abby, do you have an answer for that?
I think we can mention in our application that where we're at this point and that we're expecting to receive our full letter of support like on May 27th or May 30th. And things can be submitted a little bit after the fact, if that works for you all.
You're fine with that? Okay. Any other questions from directors? Comments? Seeing no hands, we'll vote on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Abby. Okay, so we're now on to reports. Item 7.1, and I understand consultant Lisa Moffat is with us and is going to provide a brief presentation regarding the communications and engagement strategy. Lisa, you're there.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Shelley. Oh, yep. Shelley, can you hear me?
Yes.
Shelley can. Okay. Shelley, Michelle, my colleague Melissa, myself and another colleague, Alex, of ours have been working on this for almost a year now. So we're very happy to be here and present our final report. I'll just share my screen for the presentation. And you can all see that now? Thanks. So I'll just give you a bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We'll let you know what we did, what we heard from people who participated in the engagement portion of the project, the number of deliverables we created. It was a pretty deliverable heavy project, some of our key recommendations, and just some thoughts on gaps and limitations that you may want to pick up on that we weren't able to address as part of the project. So through engagement, we wanted to share information about the role of the regional district with residents, gain insight into the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges that currently exist with communications and engagement across the region, seek feedback on the best ways to engage with different communities across electoral areas in the city, understand the best ways to communicate about engagement with different communities, so those electoral areas in the city, and cultivate relationships between the regional district, community organizations, and key actors who could help with engagement promotion in the future. So engagement took place between July and November of last year and consisted of interviews with key actors. And I'll just identify, we at Resilience Planning, we use the term key actors instead of stakeholders because of the negative connotations of the word stakeholder, which comes from settlers to North America being given free land, claiming it by driving 4 stakes into the boundaries of it. We hosted 5 workshops from October to November, 1 in each of the electoral areas and 1 for the city of Powell River residents. We had a pop-up event at the recreation complex in November, and we had online and hard copy surveys, and the survey ran from October 18th to November 19th. We had 255 respondents to the survey. 33 of those were on hard copy. And in addition to the hard copy surveys, we also direct mailed surveys to all the residents of Lasqueti Island. Residents across the region could also phone the regional district, and staff would help them complete the survey. So pretty low barrier access there. In terms of promotion, we did direct outreach with key actors in the community, direct emails to a variety of organizations. We had posters at all the key bulletin boards around the region. There was a news release, a radio ad on Coast FM, print ads in Cathy Living and the Peak. There was the regional district webpage that's still live with the information about the project. Hard copies were delivered to key locations throughout the region. And we offered incentives for completion of the survey. So 2 people were the recipients of $50 gift certificates to local businesses. So in terms of what we heard, we did learn about the best communication channels to promote engagement activities, were local newsletters, social media channels, and bulletin focus groups, in-person and virtual events. So no one way of engaging stood out across the region. So we did learn that the regional district is really good at reaching the quote unquote usual suspects and struggles to reach a diverse population across the region. So for example, few people under 35 participated in the engagement for this project. And we'll see as we go through some of our recommendations, this is probably resulting in a disconnect where the regional district doesn't have social media presence or a strong social media presence. So we did learn that the regional district should be using social media and local networks. So Facebook, I think everybody is aware that this whole community operates on Facebook, and it's where most residents are gathering their information. So without a presence on Facebook, you're missing reaching some key people. Participants encouraged the regional district to use local email lists and communication networks, and we did learn about those specifically as part of this project. People want to feel heard and require diverse methods of communication and engagement. So different ways of sharing information and engaging with residents across the region are needed. Online surveys and in-person events are preferred. And there really is a culture of meeting in person here. And I think now that we're coming out of COVID and public health orders are lifting, people are really enjoying being each other's company and having those closer in-person conversations. And we also learned about the different times of day and during the week that people prefer, and during the year that people prefer to be engaged. We did gain some understanding about local differences. So understanding some of the community constraints, including timing and availability. So when we talk about, inviting people over from Texada or Lasqueti, ferry schedules are a real issue. And connectivity, we did do a bit of a data coverage study for the project and learned where there's connectivity gaps in the region. And regular engagement and communication on issues is important across the region. And then we did learn about more specific localized differences, and that we report out on that in our summary report, which was appended to the agenda. So capacity building, just continuing with what we heard, capacity building is needed during communication engagement. There is a lack of understanding about what the regional district does. When we were phoning people in the city to, let them know about the project, they were confused that we were calling city residents about a regional district project because they didn't understand that they benefit from regional district services. So people could benefit for some more clarity about what you do, and also more clarity around what is on and off the table in engagement conversations. So really defining those boundaries to set engagement expectations. Information should be succinct, accessible, and relevant. So participants want communication and background information that's brief but comprehensive. We caution staff about using jargon, and people want to know how the project or decision impacts them. So it could even look like a quick briefing note at the beginning of engagement materials that describe those things. People are really looking for open and transparent processes, and people's experience of the regional district's processes is that they can be quite bureaucratic. So people are looking for lower barrier engagement, and they want to understand how their feedback impacts decisions. As I mentioned, this was a fairly deliverable heavy project. So just hang tight here with me while I walk you through the deliverables that we developed as part of this. So the first was a demographic profile, and as I mentioned, an internet connectivity study. So we really wanted to understand an overview of who lives here in the region so that we could have a good idea of being representative in our participation. And then we wanted to understand, what the limitations would be on people's ability to participate. And I should say, we entered into engagement as the fourth wave of the pandemic was hitting. And so we made a very conscious decision to keep all engagement activities online, except for the hard copy survey, so that we could meet project timeline expectations. And so that, we wouldn't have to keep project costs or changes to costs at a minimum, so that we wouldn't have to switch tactics partway through if public health orders change. So that was quite deliberate. Just coming back to the demographic profile, one of our learnings there was, delivering paper agendas to island communities and providing pre-postage paid envelopes for them to return information is helpful if there's low internet connectivity. We created a corporate style guide. So the purpose of which, actually, and the results of which you're seeing right here with this template for presentation. So the corporate style guide really is to help staff and the regional board use clear and consistent language to fulfill the mission of the organization. And it provides recommendations and preferences for writing and editorial style for staff, contractors, and consultants. Staff and board members are encouraged to use the guidelines when writing reports, correspondence, website content, committee minutes, signage, surveys, advertising, etc. And then we updated your accountability framework. So the purpose of the framework is to identify the different roles and responsibilities internally across the organization for a variety of communication and engagement tasks. And it outlines the timeline expectations for frequency for updating and reporting out on each task. It addresses things like corporate communications, media relations, the website, corporate identity, public information, planning, land use and development, etc. We also conducted a social media analysis. So really it was to present the regional district staff with an overview of social media channels that are available and opportunities to use them. And it provides guidelines for use and an overview of what you might include in a social media policy, things like privacy considerations, et cetera. And so that's also appended to your agenda today. We developed a corporate brand guide and corporate templates. So the brand guide is really to provide clear and consistent design guidelines and used as a framework for design collateral. So include things like logo types, size and placement, use of primary, secondary, and tertiary brand colors, typography, accent designs, icons, and photography. And several templates were created, including for the regional district and the hospital regional district to use. Templates include a classified ad, large poster, media release, letterhead, and as I mentioned, this presentation slide deck. And the Cathy Hospital District templates include a media release, letterhead, and presentation slide deck. So we also developed a What We Heard report and engagement snapshot. So the What We Heard report really is a summary of all the feedback that we received from all our engagement activities conducted as part of the project. And the document lets the public know what we heard them say. It's used to inform our recommendations on the engagement in this report. So feedback that we did hear from people is directly reflected in our recommendations to you. And we also produced an engagement snapshot, which just is like a one-pager sort of infographic with some of the key numbers of participation rates and some of the key takeaways, which I outlined earlier in this presentation. We also developed a public communications and engagement policy. We'll updated it for you. So the purpose of the policy is to provide guidance to you folks to support your work in effective, timely, consistent, professional, and proactive communications with community members and partners, and to really focus on meaningful engagement to respond to community needs and inform your decision-making. So the policy covers things like corporate communications, operational and project communications, media relations, the website, social media, advertising, corporate identity, emergency communications, public engagement, and public information. And then we also produced some engagement templates for you. So as part of the project, we understood some staff aren't fully using the engagement framework as intended and are looking for more tools, but the engagement framework actually has really good tools in it. And in our professional opinion, was a very well-informed document about public engagement for local government. So we supplemented some of the tools in the document with a couple of templates, including a template for reporting out on engagement outcomes. And then in terms of key recommendations for engagement, we learned that, staff aren't all using the engagement framework regularly. So we really want to encourage them to reference that and use it. and to use those templates at the end of the document. We encourage you to provide training opportunities for staff who have engagement responsibilities. And we highly recommend reporting back to the public with information about how their feedback was used. So there was a 2021 community satisfaction survey that we don't think we're unclear if the results have been circulated publicly yet. That's just as an example. And it was clear through our engagement that people are unsure what services the regional district provides. So I touched on that earlier. And I'll flip it over to my colleague, Melissa, who is my communications professional sub-consultant on the project. And Melissa, I'll get you to walk us through the communications policy recommendations.
Great, thank you, Lisa. In terms of the communications policy, we updated the draft and provided a draft communications policy. It's not the one that's appended to the staff report today. It's something that staff is going to bring forward later for the board to review. Within that updated policy, we removed several sections and recommend that the regional district create separate policies in some cases. We provided examples from other local governments for those sections, and they include things like correspondence, bylaw enforcement, director's notifications, guidelines for public information for meetings, statutory communications, marketing, sponsorship, and promotions, and social media. So distinct areas of business of the regional district that needs their own policies. In terms of internal communications, the roles and responsibilities and procedures for internal communications should be formalized. For example, to share health and wellness updates, emergency information, or information internally about organizational initiatives, and responsibilities should be shared among various departments. That's not uncommon for local governments, that sometimes external communication is formalized and internal communication can be a gap. Other general recommendations about the website is that it's very well organized and easy to navigate, however, is missing some key content which could improve the experience of users. A content audit was not included in the scope of this strategy, but is still recommended to address gaps. For example, board policies are hard to find or are absent some basic information about how people can contact staff or the board is missing or hard to find or could use improvement. General recommendations as well are to assume that community members don't know anything about the regional district or how to contact the right person within the organization to get their question answered or needs addressed. To improve communication and engagement, a more comprehensive get in touch section on the website would be useful. And then in terms of social media, I did a complete analysis of that. And based on our research about community preferences and our experience in trying to promote the engagement opportunities for this project and trends in local governments, our recommendation is that the regional district should create an organizational Facebook page. In fact, the most recent survey, in a recent survey, 79 out of 157 responses came through Facebook, even though it wasn't promoted on through social media. So it is telling that people in the communities are on Facebook. In terms of best practices, it's important to set up a profile using high quality photos, logo, formal description, and links back to the website, ensuring that there are privacy policies visible, that there's a social media policy available and linked from it, and really using social media to link back to more detailed information on the regional district website. The Cathy Regional District has a Powell River Regional Emergency Program Twitter account, and it was unclear in our analysis exactly how administrative staff work with emergency programming staff during an emergency. I understand that some of the details are included in emergency plans, but in terms of coordination with administrative staff, it could use some work. Some important things for emergency communication are to be really prepared with draft messaging, hashtags, and really understanding the roles and responsibilities when you activate an EOC or during an emergency for the interface between emergency social media and all of the other regional district channels. In terms of other social media, Instagram could be used at the same time as Facebook to reach additional audiences without a lot of extra work. It can be managed through the same online interface. LinkedIn can be quite useful for recruitment for local government. Staff would definitely need training. Organizing an editorial calendar can be helpful just to organize content so that it's coordinated across the regional district. And in addition to training, it could be useful to just practice and try different things, such as allocating certain amounts of advertising budgets to social media and monitoring performance and adjusting from there. I'll hand it over to Lisa for some gaps and limitations.
Thanks. Sorry, operating two screens and all the things. So in terms of gaps and limitations, engagement promotion, Melissa recognized that the region doesn't have a social media presence for us to advertise through. So there was a limitation sharing there. And I used my personal Facebook account and subscribe to some local electoral area Facebook groups to get the word out, which was not desirable. We learned through our engagement events that hyper-local social media and email channels are what residents are using to share information. So we've identified those in our report for your use going forward. In terms of engagement methods, I talked about that earlier, that we made a decision because of the fourth wave to keep it virtual. And our engagement methods and promotion didn't reach as many youth as we'd like. Even in conversation with the youth at the pop-up event that we hosted at the recreation complex, I straight up asked these young folks who are filling out the survey, like, how do I actually reach you? Like, where are you hanging out? And they said they hang out at each other's houses. So it's hard to even go to where they're at. Non-white residents, so many respondents to the survey were white, and there were low population numbers for racialized residents of the regional district. It's unclear how best to reach them. Using social media and email lists mentioned above may help with participation from those groups in the future. And just some other considerations. The objective for the engagement program was to determine the different ways people wanted to engage with the regional district for each electoral area. However, that approach doesn't consider differences across age, gender, ethnic identity, or other demographics. So for example, youth might prefer social media and specifically Instagram for engagement and learning about events, and older people might prefer print advertising. So it's recommended that staff use the raw data from the survey to do a crosstab analysis to better understand those nuances. And that's it for us. We'll welcome any of your questions.
Wow, thank you very much. What an engaging report. I mean, no pun intended.
We'll take the pun.
I do have some questions, but I'll open it up first to other members of the board if there are comments or questions from other directors. All right, I'm not seeing any hands that are waving at me, so I'll jump in here. Oh, sorry, Director Paul, I didn't see you there. Go ahead.
That's okay. You can go ahead. Okay, I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. The report has a lot in it, so I don't have any specific questions, but there's a lot of ideas in there and a lot to work through. There's a lot of recommendations, so it's going to take a while, I think, to digest. I have a few ideas on Lasqueti itself, but I think it's not really the meeting for that. I think as we roll out through this, we'll figure out what makes sense in the specific areas and overall and so on. I think there's a lot of policy and a lot of process to think about, but I think I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Paul. And certainly what's good on Lasqueti isn't necessarily going to be good on Texada or in the city of Powell River. So it's really clear that for communication, there is no one size fits all, that our communication plan has to be geared at reaching the various audiences out there that we want to reach. Social media, huge now, everywhere perhaps except Texada, where a lot of people don't have access to the internet. Again, you have to vary each solution to get the target audience there. Some things about the report I really like. I really like the recommendation that staff should report back to the public after engagement has occurred, letting the public know that they were listened to and that information has been received. I think that's a really smart way of kind of closing that circle there of information. I think it's a great recommendation to put more information out there about how we do things and what we do, how we make decisions. It's all part of our strategic priority of being transparent and accountable and open about, you know, the way things happen here. So we shouldn't be such a mystery, and finding the right way to get that out will be an ongoing challenge. I also think that addressing the website there's some great recommendations there. I know I have been told by people who have looked at the website who they thought it wasn't the most friendly website in the world. Information was there, but unless you're really familiar with using websites and accessing information, you don't necessarily know how to get it. You don't know what to click. It's you know, some people have told me that they found it very, very confusing. So I think that will all make improvements to you know, what we're already doing reasonably well. I think it's important that we also pay attention to things that we were told by the different areas of the region. For one, on Texada, no dinner time meetings. Dinner time meetings are very commonplace because of the ferry schedule, and that's when staff can get over and then come back. But you know what, with virtual opportunities now, staff can attend meetings virtually as long as there's someone who knows how to do that technologically. So we don't necessarily have to be governed by the ferry schedule anymore. People don't want dinner time meetings. And I believe that was a comment that came out of the city as well. So I want to really thank you for this report, all of which leads up to the question that I want to ask. And it's perhaps a rhetorical question, but how many staff positions are you envisioning that would need to be employed to carry all this out? You know, social media seems like almost a full-time job for one person, yet we don't really have anyone charged with that. So I'm just wondering if you've looked at how a staff hierarchy would be, you know, used, what would be necessary to carry these very good recommendations forward.
Thanks, Sandy. So we didn't do that level of analysis for you, but there is a recommendation for a staff position in there. And Melissa, I'm sorry, and I'm drawing a little bit of a blank on the details, but Melissa, that was for communications, right? To have a permanent.
Yeah, I could jump in, and just having worked in a variety of municipalities, it's not uncommon to have 1 to 2 staff members for a smaller municipality. Usually you would have someone in a managerial senior position and often a junior position who can handle some of the social media, maybe website updates, newsletter for community members, and help with things like media relations. So 1 to 2 in the social media section. I think we did identify resources too that you could potentially hire someone as a contractor even that could do a certain number of hours a week to support someone in a core communications position. And we recognize that with a regional district that sometimes budgets are finite, and that staff resources can be scarce. So we've tried to make to make tools that could be very useful for a small team, and to build on the things that are already working.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up again. Are there any final questions or comments from directors? I'm seeing no hands up. So I want to thank you very much. I understand, Corporate Officer, there will be a further report coming regarding the communication strategy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Staff will be bringing forward policies and recommendations resulting from this work at future meetings.
At future meetings.
And a lot of that work is already built into the communication advisors work plan.
Okay, fantastic. There is a recommendation before us. Director Brabazon, you were moving that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, seconded Director Leishman. Thank you. Discussion on the recommendation. Seeing no hands. Pardon? Director Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit delayed, it seems. I'll update my video in a second. I just wanted to comment on, I think moving forward is good. And the staff report that precedes the main report has a lot of information in it. And the question addressed a moment ago about financial impact, there is a section on that. And I guess as staff bring ideas forward, a lot of it, will take into mind resources and so on. But it seems like, at least according to our corporate officer, a fair number of the recommendations can be done as part of the regular work duties, in particular for the communications advisor. So, and I see our communications advisor there nodding her head. So I don't know if our communications advisor has any comments. I'd be happy to hear from Ms. Tremende. But I think that will be seen whether we need and what things could be done without further resources and what things will need to be further resourced, and that's that we'll see.
Thank you, Director Paul. Any further comments? Going once, going twice. All right. We'll vote. All in favor? Any opposed? You're in favor, Director Paul. Okay. Motion carried unanimously.
I'm very slow. I think I'm caught up now.
Okay, no worries. It's not a race. So we're now moving on to item 7.2, which is camping in regional parks other than campgrounds. And there is a recommendation before us. I don't know, are we going to hear from staff at all about this?
Thank you, Chair. Staff, Patrick Devereaux is here if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. So we have the report, we have the recommendation. Is there a mover for this recommendation? Director Brabazon, Director Leishman, thank you. Discussion, Director Brabazon.
Thank you, Chair. I think the staff report on the matter and our policy is quite clear. So I want to receive this report, and I want to advise the applicants that the policy will not permit camping in that park.
Okay, so.
And that was, there were 3 options, as I recall, in the report, all of which had the same result in terms of the applicant could not camp in the park. So you're not recommending an option, you're just simply recommending that that result. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was that an amendment?
With that amendment, yes.
Yes, okay, so.
Well, option 1, call it option 1.
Okay, option 1, which is in here on the 4th page of the report. There's option 1, option 2, and then option 3.
So we currently have a motion on the table to receive the report.
All right, and so why don't we do that first, and then we can have a further discussion regarding what options or further recommendations. So on the motion to receive the report, is there any further comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, Director Brabazon, you're making a subsequent motion.
Option 1.
Okay, for option 1 in the report, and that is the one that is chosen. Is there a seconder for that option 1 choice? Is there a seconder for that option 1 choice, Director Brander? Discussion. Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank our Manager of Operational Services for digging through all the details and looking at this issue in real detail. It's definitely challenging. my heart goes out to want to help people and to try to want to do it. And I think we all were thinking that, but when you get into the details of what it implies and so on, it's definitely challenging, and the time frame doesn't work for the current request in any case. So I think, asking our manager of operational services to do more work to look into other options at this time, given our resource challenges, I think doesn't make sense. So I'm in favor of moving forward with that as the motion on the table.
Thank you, Director Paul. Further discussion? I'm not seeing any hands, so we will vote. All in favor? Okay, on to 7.3, the election procedure amendment bylaw, which is in the agenda. What is your pleasure with this?
Move.
Director Bravazon, seconded by Director Fall. Discussion? Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair. It's maybe a question for our corporate officer. So, I understand the report was really clear and we don't have to do this, but the provincial legislation has changed to enable it, and it's just us. We should clean up our bylaw in any case. So this is to make it choosing to align with provincial legislation. Is there an opportunity? I know from UBCM and AVICC, there's always concerns about expanding remote voting and in rural areas. That comes up, and I'm in favor of democracy and access, but I think the question I have is, when the elections are done, will we be able to see in the results the number of people that take advantage of this expanded opportunity? Will that be differentiated in the votes, the mail-in versus the in-person?
Yeah, I believe the answer is yes, but I will ask our corporate officer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And if I may, so through our discussions with other corporate officers and deputy corporate officers, it did come out this week that if we are going to offer mail ballot voting, this is actually a required change. We do have to meet legislation. So that did come out through conversations with other local governments in the province. But we should make this change to line up with, we need to.
But when the votes are tallied, is there a separate tally for the mail-in ballots?
If
a separate poll?
If I can, I will look into the history and provide that information out to the directors or at the board meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Further discussion, Director Gisborne.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
One of my constituents came to me with an issue during the school district by-election. Apparently they had ordered a mail-in ballot, and the ballot that they had received was incomplete. So on election day, they went down to vote in person, and they were turned away because they had been told that they were on the mail-in ballot list. So my question is, if someone tries to get a mail-in ballot, but something goes wrong and they show up on election day, can they still vote in person? Because they've been signed up for mail-in ballot, are they not allowed to vote in person?
Corporate officer.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll have to look into the legalities with that. I do know that different municipalities have different priorities with regards to requesting a ballot and being able to cast at the election on the election day. So I will look into that information and share that out.
Oh, thank you very much. No further questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any further hands up, so we will vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, which takes us to Savory Island Community Recreation Survey results.
Moved.
The recommendation has been moved, seconded by Director Brander. Discussion.
Good survey, Chair. Good results. We know what. I'm not surprised at the result.
Okay, thank you. And So a majority who filled the survey out were not in favor, clearly. So that's, I understand. Any further questions or comments? Seeing no hands, we'll vote. All in favor. Any opposed? Carried. So we are now on to the first quarter strategic plan progress report. And we have that and a recommendation regarding that in front of us. Is there a mover for this recommendation?
I'll move. Second.
Okay. That we received. Is there a seconded by Director Paul? Okay. Discussion. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any hands up. So I did read it, and I have a couple of questions, I guess, regarding the report. Okay, on page 5 of the report, there's a little typo, which is just, it says on the top right corner, the use of the trailer is fee, and it should be free. So it's just one word that is one letter missing. So on page 7 of the report, there is an item about the Texada drainage study, which is under Laura's umbrella. And I'm just wondering if, because there has been no action come forward on the part of the ministry, joint funding toward this project, and because we're seeing increasing rainfall like today and flooding at the clinic and a lot of flooding going on Texada, I would like to know from directors if you would be willing to send a letter, if you'd be interested in sending a letter to the ministry reminding that this project is overdue, and if we don't get a positive response, taking this to UBCM. Great, Rabzon.
Perhaps we should hear from Ms. Rodden as to where she thinks our request has gone.
Good point. Thank you. Ms. Rodden, you were there. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I have no information to share other than, I mean, I have had constant communication with Reno Parise at the ministry and with Michael Braun. And my understanding is the funding just isn't there on their side. So a letter may help.
All right, thank you. Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I have just one question. Seeing Ms. Rodden at the table there on the screen. On the last page of the report, and you know, I tend to ask this regularly. It's the Parks and Green Space Policy, and I see it says now there's a draft request for proposals is under development, and that seems to be a bit of an advance. So I guess is there any update on when that RFP will be completed and sent out?
Ms. Rodden?
Yeah, yes, Chair, I can answer that. Yeah, the RFP was uploaded to BC Bid earlier this week, and I could send a link to the directors if you'd like to read the RFP. So it's on BC Bid, it's on our website, and the closing date is May 31st.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Directors, I would like to take the bull by the horns and propose or move that we write a letter to the ministry, MOTI, regarding the overdue Texada drainage study, and would they bring a response back regarding when this will be funded. Is there a seconder for this motion? Director Paul, thank you. Okay, I've stated the reasons for it. So Director Brabazon, discussion.
I think we need to know to whom the letter is going to be sent. How far up the ladder are we going to go?
Well, I recall that when Minister Trevina was in the portfolio, we did receive a letter from her saying that she supported the project. And I might even in my file somewhere have a copy of it. So I'm suggesting that we send a letter to the minister Mr. Fleming.
That's part of your motion, you said?
That's part of my motion, yes, that the motion letter be sent to Minister Fleming regarding this overdue project that as winters and springs get wetter and wetter is becoming a bigger and bigger issue for us on the island. So further discussion on this motion? Yes.
Sorry, we had a mover. Did we have a seconder?
Yes.
I seconded.
Oh, thank you.
So any further discussion on sending this letter? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, I have a couple other things that I pulled out on page 8 in the motion regarding the water improvement districts. The word new was missing from the motion. Remember, we added it in afterwards. So it just needs to be added in there. So it was just left out. And I had a question regarding on page 14. This would be a question directed to Mr. Devereaux. The Emily Lake Park increase. What's the timeline on that? Can you give us a heads up?
Hi, Chair. Yes. I anticipate that the management plan will be put together by the end of June and submitted to the lands officer at Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. And yeah, one other final point I had on page 32. This is the last one. And it's regarding the Texada Airport hangar development. So I don't know if this is Ms. Howie's thing here, but it's on one hand, it says that there have been requests for additional hangar spaces, but under the update, it says waiting to resume scheduled flight service before moving forward on development of the hangar spaces. And so my comment is really, aren't these apples and oranges? We may never get a scheduled carrier, at that airport again, yet there is pressure from, people who have their own airplanes for hangar space. So Ms. Howie, can you shed some light on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree. I think those are apples and oranges. I think perhaps just a correction to that item might need to be made. There is work ongoing about that additional hangar development and separate from scheduled service.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that concludes my questions. Sorry about that noise. It will stop eventually. Well, I know. All right. Is there any further comment about this report? Do we have a recommendation before us that the committee recommend the board receive the first quarter strategic plan dated April 17th? So if there's no further questions, we will vote all in favor. Any opposed? The motion is carried. So we are on to new business and Director Brander.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you. I just want to give notice of motion that I'll be asking the committee of the whole to recommend the board send letters to appropriate local governments and organizations requesting letters of support for the installation of pedestrian/cycling bridges across Lang Creek where it meets Highway 101.
Okay, thank you. And that is a notice of motion that we will be discussing at next month's committee of the whole.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. There is no other new business on our agenda, so that takes us to question period.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. I had a question with regard to the communication strategy, although I don't see anybody here associated with it anymore. But one of the things I didn't hear about was the webcast and whether or not that was considered as part of the strategy moving forward.
I don't know is my answer to you. Do you know?
No, thank you, Chair. The webcast wasn't considered as part of the communication strategy, although we have recently made some changes to how agendas and the webcast are displayed through the portal. So you might notice that, but yes, it was not part of the communication strategy.
Yes, through the chair, I have noticed the changes, and I appreciate the fact that I can click on the cameras and go to the link. So that's been very helpful. Thank you. That was my question, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ulinski. And there's no other questions pending, so we are at the in-camera session motion. Would someone like to read this for us? All right. Will someone please move this motion on behalf of the committee?
Okay, I'll give it a shot. That the committee move in camera and that the meeting be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 91, C, labor relations or other employee relations, K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a regional district service that are at their preliminary stages, and that, in the view of the committee, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district if they were held in public. N, the consideration of whether a committee meeting should be closed under provision of this subsection or subsection 2, and that the committee move in camera and that the meeting be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 92. B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the regional district and a provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party.
Thank you, Director Gisborne. Seconded by Director Brabazon. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Passed. We're going in camera. Thank you. Are we ready to go?
We just need about 15 seconds, Chair, and then we are ready to go.
Awesome. All right, thank you.
Take that one, Chair.
Yeah, you can have those back.
Thank you, Chair. We're good to go.
All right, well, welcome back to Committee of the Whole. We have no rise in report, so we are adjourned. Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Night.
Bye.
Stay dry.
Yeah, we'll try.
Looks like there's more.